What's everybody drinking right now?
What's everyone drinking? I'm drinking
let's do a little round the horn.
Gold fashioned water.
Mm-hmm.
I got Victory Golden Monkey.
Ooh. Sam, what flavor of LaCroix?
Limoncello.
Ooh, okay.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of funky.
That is kind of funky. Actually, cut that. No free ads.
cut that.
All right. Well, yeah. It's also Memorial Day, so that means in Nationals Finals Day, so that means UNC has swept men's and women's D1 finals, of course.
Yep.
So we won't really talk about them too much because they get enough attention as it is. Let's jump into player you watched for the week, and let's start with Andrew because we all watched this guy very closely this weekend.
Yeah. This is kind of the basic pick, I feel like, because I just think it's a no-brainer. Like, he had arguably the best weekend. Jay Frood. Am I saying
Jay
that right?
Frood.
Yeah. I don't want to be rude.
With Frood.
It's Frood. Okay, Frood. We're going with Frood. Yeah, I mean, he just went off. I think when we were previewing the Summit Shred game, we were like, okay, will it be a factor? The fact that a lot of Summit players are at college nationals playing for Colorado, namely Atkins. And we were like, okay, like a big difference is going to be how these veterans, who's going to like step up, and I think Frood definitely was one of those guys. I'm just going to rattle off like some numbers really quick. I mean, 7 assists, 4 goals, 3 blocks, 694 total yards. And I think the biggest thing is no turnovers. And he was having some I wouldn't say risky throws, but he was rattling off some very high level, high skill throws. Namely, there was the one that was probably like all over AUDL's Instagram, but he was like, they were kind of on the doorstep of the end zone, and he had this like cross field throw to the opposite back corner and just like hit a guy for the goal. So, I mean, it sounded like his name was always coming up on every point. He just had a monster game, and plus minus of 14, which led the team in that game. So not too shabby of a night. Definitely the difference maker in that game for the Summit. Jay Frood, huge game. We had to talk about him. If you play that well, we have to talk about you. So that's my little tidbit there. But yeah, anyone else got anything?
I'll just say the thing that jumped out to me about Frood in that game was his versatility. Obviously he had so many goals and assists, but he was doing it like he was going deep on Clutton, and then when Clutton started to kind of swat those away, he started coming under, being a facilitator. Like, he was just everywhere for the Summit.
Yeah, Ryan, you were there. You got anything on Frood?
I mean, I think it's been said, but I'll just echo Sam's point of versatility. Like, he started off the game with an insane inside flick huck that, I mean, it was just perfect on the money. Hit his guy in stride. He was going deep. He was going under. He was handling, like, I mean, how many blocks did he get, or D's did he get this past game? He had 3 blocks. Like, he was putting stats everywhere on the stat sheet. Like, probably one so far, like, stat wise, like, best game of the year for any player, like, single-handedly on the ADL. And just to echo the importance of this game, like, looking back at our tier list, I think the Summit and the Shred like are borderline, if not both, S tier teams. And this was a big game, and to have a veteran like Frood step up, like, huge to be great, but huge to be great in the clutch when you need it.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah, Frood's no turnover performance also was incredible because there were a lot of turnovers in that game. So he outperformed everybody. Up the 14 plus minus is insane for that game, especially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And granted, like, I think you can, like, it's definitely an imperfect stat, but I think if you rack up like a 14, it's undeniable that you were like doing very good things for your team.
All right. Well, I'll actually jump down to Ryan next, since he has a player from the same game. And I included this picture that shows the sweatpants I mentioned last podcast. when he played for Colorado State. Yeah, Ryan, so tell us about Cody Spicer.
Yeah, so Cody Spicer is actually a name that I heard a bunch from some of the guys that I played pickup on, and I'd never seen him play, I never met him, but to me, it sounds like just a guy that's super nice, and I didn't really know his skill level, so going into the game, I kind of just thought like, oh, just another bud of mine or some guy I know playing Frisbee. That man was a lockdown defender. He was third on the team in plus minus. He played 20 defensive points, and he also scored 3 goals. He got a block. He was everywhere. He was hyping the team up. He was definitely one of the big factors that led Colorado to a win. Definitely huge in break opportunities on the offensive side. Definitely stood out when I was watching the game. I was a little intoxicated during the game, so I couldn't focus on a lot of players. But
intoxicated by the awesomeness of the competition, Ryan.
The competition
right?
was great. I mean, the atmosphere was great. I mean, the stadium was packed. The beers were overpriced. Like, it felt like an actual professional like sporting event. It was awesome. But no, yeah. So Cody Spicer, player I watched this week. I mean, I think you guys could speak to him too. Like, he was everywhere on that field. Definitely came up big on defensive plays. The Summit had a lot of breaks against the Shred, which helped them climb back from a hole and hold that lead. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, Spicer's defense was just unreal that entire game. I also want to shout him out because the broadcaster mentioned he's getting married on June 19th. So
nice.
I love those little I love those tidbits from the AUDL broadcasters because they're like buds with all the teams. So there's like a lot of intimate like details that they kind of drop sometimes because I think there's just like dead air and they're like, I'm gonna just say things. It's like, I know
this guy had an upset tummy last night.
It's like shit like that. It's great. I really like it.
Yeah,
stuff you don't get in other sports.
Somebody else I want to shout out on that game actually is Joel Clutton, who's on the Shred, who's actually covering Jay all game. And Jay Frood put up a ton of stats, but I think Joel Clutton had at least 4 deep blocks on Jay.
Oh yeah.
And when you're matched up with probably the best player on somebody's team and you're like really making him work for it, like, shout out Joel. Pretty good. He's huge. I don't know if you've seen that guy, but he's like, I think 7'2", and he's playing Frisbee. It's pretty sick.
Okay. Well, I will jump then to my guy. So Seattle was a big story this weekend. They got their first win. Congrats to them. And they won pretty convincingly against Portland. They won by, I think, 7. And so I was watching that game and I was trying to decide between Adam Simon and Declan Miller from the Cascades as my kind of player of the week. And the reason I went with Simon is because this game was one of those ugly it was Seattle weather. So it was rainy, it was windy, it was gross. There were a lot of like slips and mistakes and turns. But Simon was like your classic, like reliable handler in this game. And like the big difference in this game was Seattle was holding and Portland was not because of, weather and mistakes that are understandable. But Simon was the reason that Seattle kept holding because I wrote down, he had 7 assists, a goal, a block. He had 97% completion in that weather, which was crazy. And he had 723 total yards, 500 were throwing. Yeah, he was just like your classic, everything you want out of a main handler. He was hitting hucks. He was getting open for resets. I also wanted to note it was only his second game of the season. He played in their first loss to Portland too. So I do wonder, the website mentioned he has kids. So I wonder if he doesn't like travel very far with Seattle because of that. But if he does play a majority of their games moving forward, I think it'll be a big key for their turnaround.
That's a good pick. I'm glad that you brought someone up for Seattle because I do think it's worth mentioning that game. Like, I think did any of us pick Seattle when we were doing the preview?
No, I wanted to, but I got scared.
I don't think any of us did. So like, I think that's great that they got that win. I think I watched like the beginning. I watched the first half just earlier today just to see what was up. And he was like, seemed like Adam Simon was in the end zone, a good amount of the time. And he definitely looked like a leader on that team. So it was cool to see them get a win. I think it would have just been, that would have sucked if they didn't win this game, honestly.
All right. Then let's go to Joe's pick.
Honestly, I'm surprised I'm the only person who picked an alley cat this week. Our history with this Indianapolis team, but Keegan, I mean, what a crazy cool player. He was just doing everything this week. He led the team in assists, and he also led the team in receiving yards. He was just kind of this player who would stay back and handle and throw a couple quick little passes, and then just as soon as he let go of a pass, make a strike, make some sick 20-yard upline cut, catch it in stride, and find somebody in the end zone. He was just the guy who was kind of just everywhere on the field. The D was moving around with him, and he was able to just understand where the D was and when he needed to be upfield, and he would always be there. He was rarely throwing it more than 10 yards if it wasn't for a score, and he was rarely making these huge cuts into the end zone. He was making big cuts. They were finding him, and he knew somebody was going to be open in the end zone. He had 7 assists, 2 goals, and a hockey assist. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have looked at the heat maps under the game stats in any of the games, but it was really cool to look at his because it shows you completions, targets, throwaways, assists, goals, all of it. And it's like where you started, where you threw it. And he would just have like a few 5-yard little slashes, and then like a 20-yard slash upward where he caught it, and then another like 30-yard slash upward into the end zone. And it was just like very clear from that he was setting up a play and then just ending the possession. And honestly, one of the hardest parts of rewatching this game to look at, just like for specifically him and look at his possessions, was just how quickly the alley cats go from getting the disc to it being in the end zone. And so when I was skipping through to get to their possessions, I would like skip 2 minutes and they would have already scored, and I had to scroll back to see it. But yeah, I mean, also similar to Cody Spicer looking cool in sweatpants, Keegan North had a really cool sweatshirt on underneath his jersey, which made it very easy to tell who he was at all times. But B, it just like looked really cool. And I personally really appreciate someone who can be a third handler, but also be a really important cutter. And I mean, I just think it's crazy to lead the team in assists and receiving yards in a single game. And so I thought he was really fun to watch.
That's nutty. Those are some nutty numbers to be able to do that.
Yeah, he broke somebody's ankles a couple times in the game, and then just like dropped back 5 yards for like a negative 2-yard catch. It was like just very representative of his game. He'll fuck you up, but he's not going to be the one to score it on you.
You bringing that up, I just actually wonder, do handlers lose yardage if they receive like a negative yardage pass, or does that count as yards?
I think so.
I think you get the negative yards,
because I've seen negative throwing yards for a lot of like players who don't throw much. So I assume like handlers will get the -5, but they get all those like slashes and stuff. So
you shouldn't be penalized for like hitting a reset though. I feel like
for sure.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Whatever.
All right.
I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a stat that is actually just like how many yards you threw it, not like upwards or downwards, just like how many yards from where you threw it to where it ended up.
Actually, speaking of which, just speaking of throwing yards, I have a fun little tidbit. I don't know when the best time, but I guess now is as good as any because we're talking like throwing yards. But I DM'd the AUDL stats people, and I was just talking with them, and I asked, like, how do you measure yards, just like in general, because like some of the fields don't have hash marks. So how does it work? Like, and apparently what they do is, okay, so what they told me is the league developed a tablet-based app where stat keepers reflect the action on the field with rough field location. And they went on to say an ideal version would be putting trackers on players and the disc, but we aren't there yet. So someone's like out there at every game, like holding an iPad, presumably, I don't know, like that. I honestly still don't really know how it works, but like that, to me, what that tells me is that like someone's there at every game, like keeping track of this stuff, which is crazy.
That's wild, because like,
yeah,
I can barely keep track of who scores a goal. Like I'm like filming or at a college game, and you're telling me they know every single throw and play. And
it must,
that's a lot of focus.
It must be like the same technology that this is gonna sound really stupid, but like, you know how like Pokemon Go, it's like the camera is like it's using your phone camera, but then it's like animating like a Pokemon or something. It's probably doing that, but it can like, it maybe uses like AI or something, and it knows what the field is, and then it can kind of like measure with the camera or something and keep track. I have no idea.
That's how the NBA does it, but with like 29 very high tech cameras in like every stadium in the rafters. Yeah.
Yeah, this is some guy with or person with an iPad. Like, so maybe when we look at like these stats, we maybe need to like, you know, keep take it with a grain of salt, because it's amazing that the information's there, but they're still working on it, you know, which is cool. Like I think that whoever's behind all this is like, shout out to them. It's like amazing. It blows my mind. But yeah, just wanted to share that little tidbit. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, well, now let's sort of go game by game. And obviously we're not going to give every game the same level of attention. So I figured for games like this that maybe weren't super close or interesting, we can just sort of run through very quickly. Does anyone have any strong thoughts or feelings about this game?
I've got a lot more notes on the Empire's second game, but
a lot of strong Canadian sounding names on that royal list over there. Brissett, Duquette, Samar.
I guarantee you're not pronouncing these right.
That sounds accurate to me.
But anyway, no, yeah, I watched this game and it was like, you know, it was an ugly sort of rain game. New York was a lot better, and there are a lot of mistakes for both sides, but if you're playing New York, you can't make mistakes, so New York won.
I caught the beginning of it, and my takeaway was like, I was like, Montreal's fine, like they're good, and every AUDL team is good, and New York is really good. That was just kind of my takeaway. I was like, New York is, I was like, damn.
So next I'll go to Yujo, since you mentioned you have some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, well, originally I was going to talk about Oscar, so I had more notes on this one than I had the other one, and I mean, he had an amazing game. He had 6 assists, 2 goals, a hockey assist, and he was 23 for 23. But then I just was like looking at the entire Empire, and their top 5 in completions, just the people who threw the disc in the most, they had 3 turnovers. They were 159 for 162 incompletions, and that's just insane. All 3 of those incompletions came from one guy. So 4 of their top 5 were perfect on the day, and it's insane that they're adding John Randolph from Brown on top of this. This is just like a ridiculously good team. Also, Ottawa had 27 turnovers.
Jeez,
that's tough.
Yeah, they
can't do that.
At the start of the game, I didn't think they played like terribly, but not very good. Also, New York had 75% huck rate. They're 75% completions on their hucks, which is just ridiculous. They played so well.
All right. 2-0 for the Empire. Nothing surprising there. I'll talk about this game because I did watch it. I did watch the whole thing, and my first thought, the first note I wrote down was that they kept using these incredibly annoying field level camera angles like during the play, and it would just be like, I can't see what's happening. Can you switch? And this was like one of the rare overhead angles that was actually wide enough to show the entire field. So it was like, please just give me that. But anyway, no, for this game, Detroit had a slow start, and so I kind of thought it was going to be another romp. But they did have Mac Heck this time, and they were playing him on their D line, and that was actually kind of a big change because they were, in weeks past, Detroit's been just god awful at converting breaks, but with Mac Heck, he could sort of go every other and convert their break chances when they had them. But yeah, by the end of the game, it was just like Detroit couldn't get enough blocks to make up for, especially like how many mistakes they were making on offense, and like they're just not a great team. So
yeah, I think Heck really stood out for me. Also, he was third in yards for them despite playing most of his possessions on the D line, which I thought was pretty cool. And his defense, his help defense was really good. He was just always in a position to take away somebody who lost their opponent.
I think we have one more game that, this one is the other one that I was like, we don't really need to go super in depth. So I mercifully, they only had the second half uploaded on AUDL .tv. So I watched that, and yeah, the field was just like covered in mud.
That's what I'm saying. Like, what is going on?
Ugly. The only thing I will say that was kind of interesting was this guy, I want to say it was one of the Cannons, got this guy on D, he like roofs some dude, and then he gives him like a finger wag in his face, and then I got a 10-yard penalty for that.
Wow.
I was like, that's kind of lame, but
wow. That's tough.
But yeah, Pittsburgh was better, but that's not like saying a ton. I think they're both kind of F tier.
Who had the Cannons winning this game?
I did, I think.
I might have. I don't know. I might have done it just because of home field, but I should have known because their home field is like the worst one.
A pile of
I think maybe not Joe, but I thought this might have been the one where I was the only one on the Thunderbirds, and you guys were
I was heavy on the Cannons this time.
Yeah,
I was really wrong.
I think I was.
Probably the strongest for the Cannons of anyone.
I think I was heavy against them. I said they're the worst team in the league, and you guys were like, "No, I think they're gonna get their win this week."
Yeah,
they're the worst team in the league, and they have the worst field.
Yeah,
that's tough, man.
That's
tough. Ryan, I think you had a great. We need to go back and like check your record, but you might have beat all of us. Like I think
the only one I lost was Seattle, which we all lost.
All right, well, moving on. So here's the first one we can sort of dig into. This was like a really good game. Yeah, I've been talking a lot about the Dookie game. So anyone want to kick us off with this one?
Taylor, did you watch this game?
I did. I watched most of it. The problem is, so I watched like almost the whole thing, and then I had to go drive my girlfriend home like in the fourth quarter, and I was like, oh, and then I was like, can I give you my car keys? And she was like, are you serious? And I was like, all right. And I drove her home, and I came back, and it was like the Breeze were like fighting to get a break. They were down a break. They needed a break and then hold, and they were going to win, and they were like running out of time. And I was like glued to my seat, and then I had to leave, and I came back, and then they were winning. And I was like, fuck, what happened? But I was like blown away at how good the rush looked. I really thought that they gave DC a run for their money. Their O-line was nails. They were, until they got broken, like at the very end, I mean, they were like step for step with DC, and honestly, just like going through DC's defense like butter. I'm gonna just like real quick, because I remember last week I was like, DC didn't get a lot of blocks. And I just want to look at like what their team blocks are right now, but I don't think maybe the story is like DC's defense isn't that good right now. But I mean, Toronto, and we're going to talk like changing tiers later, but I mean, Toronto looked solid against a team that I consider in the Breeze being a very good team. So it was an exciting game. Shout out to Musa Dia. I don't know how many goals that dude got, but it seemed like he was in the end zone every time for the Breeze. I think he was a big
he had 5
difference maker. And then obviously Rowan McDonald.
McDonald had an amazing game.
Just a couple quick stats: 888 yards. Like that's insane. It was like it's like a career game for him. He completed 57 of 58 throws. Like he just had a monster game. He stepped up. He looked a little pissed off. I think like he's a pretty like even keel kind of guy. I think most of the time his game is just like he just kind of goes out. He doesn't seem like he gets too high or too low. Like, and he looked just like something like just pissed him off in this game. He was like, fuck this. We're not going to lose. Like, let's go, and just like launched some dime hucks. So
wait, Lou, is that a Toronto Rush t-shirt you're wearing?
It is a Rush t-shirt, which I think is the namesake of the team because Rush is a Canadian
I didn't know that.
I think based out of Toronto. Yeah. I need to get a Toronto Rush jersey because I really like Rush. So like that's the only reason.
Yeah.
I want to shout out Tyler Monroe had 11 hockey assists.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
I want to go back to your point you made about the Breeze not getting very many blocks. Because I was watching, I was like, wow, like the D-line looks really good for the Breeze. And I checked and they got 6 breaks on 6 break chances. Yeah. So like credit to their D-line, but 6 break chances is not enough against any team. Even if you're gonna like score on all of them. Like I think that's the thing that probably keeps DC from being in that elite tier is obviously their O-line is good, their D-line is good, but they maybe just aren't good enough at generating turnovers.
Yeah, real quick math, they get 7.3 blocks a game, which is like really good teams get like, at least 10, between like 9 to 12 is like where you want to be, they get 7.3. That's not where you want to be. So they got to figure something out, get some more pressure on D. They have great defenders.
Yeah. Another point about the Breeze defense is that the Rush were only in the red zone 5 times, and they were 4 for 5. But that almost every score was a huck. It was from very deep, which is probably something that the Breeze want to work on, because it's crazy to only be in the end zone 5 or in the red zone 5 times, convert on it 4 times, and put up 26 points.
Yeah. So all right, I wanted to shout out Ryan Polaz of the Rush. It was only his 2nd game of the year, but I didn't write down his stats for this game, but on the season he has 8 assists and 9 goals in 2 games. And last year he played 7 games. He only got 12 assists and 10 goals. So he's really stepped up compared to last year.
Dang.
And he had some really saucy, like upside down throws over doubles and stuff. He looked good.
Is he the dude? Who's the dude, the Mohawk on Rush? What's that guy's name?
I think that's Oscar Stonehouse. He also had a sick game.
What a name.
I wrote down he had 2 assists, 3 hockey assists on 15 throws. So he was making things happen on his throws.
Yeah.
Damn.
Here we go. The official game of the week from AUDL. I caught some of this live, and then I didn't see it posted online, so I didn't get to watch it. But
it's this dumb thing that they do, where it's like it's our game of the week, and then it's live on Fox Sports or like FS2 or something, and then I don't think they post the replay like after the game ends or something. But what I will say is that I just went on AUDL TV and I just clicked on it and I watched like the first few points. Like I think they forgot to like not stream it or something. So I caught the beginning of it. But yeah, I don't know. They do this thing where it's like, it's the game of the week. This is the best matchup. And then you can't watch it. Like if you don't have cable, which sucks.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Off topic, but we're talking about something that AUDL really needs to figure out is if they're trying to grow the sport and grow the league, like the barrier to entry to watch any of these games is like what is the monthly subscription, like 10 or 15 bucks, and
$10.
every other $10, and like that's more than a Netflix, a Spotify, like all of these like subscriptions that like people use all the time. And like even the games that are like on Fox Sports, you can't watch it on your AUDL subscription. Like there's got to be some kind of middle ground of being able to make money and also growing the sport.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I don't know the first thing about running a sports league, but I mean, like you got to make the streams more accessible. Like who's watching these games? Honestly, like we're super into Frisbee, so like we'll do it, but like you got to put, the product is amazing. Honestly, the games are really exciting, and we were like texting in our group chat, like, holy shit, these games are awesome. Like especially the I'm sure the Summit game that we'll get to, but like the product is there. Like it's great. Like they've pretty much figured it out. It's just like you got to get it, and you got to get more eyes on it. And I don't know if they're doing enough to really do that. I watched the beginning of this wind chill game. Did anyone like get eyes on this game? Honestly,
Live, no.
I saw a handful of points, but not enough to really talk about it.
All I'll say is like the beginning, it looked very evenly matched. The wind chill were playing, really, really well. It was very like, it just felt like there was something extra. Like it felt like a rivalry game. Like Midwest rivalry, tightly contested division, maybe like, I bet all these players have been playing against each other, like, Grey Duck and, Wisconsin and like in college and high school, even. It felt very like everyone was just going nuts. I was like more than the other games, and these are like amazing athletes every game. I'm like, wow, these guys are going hard, but like this game was something else. Like they were dialed into another gear for this one. So I was like almost like, oof, slow it down, guys. Like, oh man.
I will say on this game, I think the stat on the slide isn't totally updated because I looked and Brett Bergmeyer had 4 blocks for the wind chill.
That was going to be my stat to think of too.
And he led the game in plus minus, or led the team as a D-line player, which is nuts. And the other thing was D-line conversion. Just each team had 10 chances, and the wind chill went 7 of 10, and the Radicals went 3 of 10. So the D-line, though, I guess, was the difference. But yeah, it looked like it was an ugly game by the stats. The completions were low, and hug percentages were booty.
Very low scoring. They held the Wisconsin to 16 points.
That's crazy.
Impressive. That's crazy.
That's nothing.
Lower scores I've seen.
Game.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to a game that we were able to watch. Oh, yeah. So Seattle getting their first win.
Handedly too.
Yeah, for real. They slowed down Leandro Marks somewhat.
A bit. Yeah.
Was Daniel Lee on the roster for this game? Let me check. Because like I was like, oh man, there's no way Seattle can stop this dude. And then they won very handily. So I just went.
No.
I don't know if there's a way to check, but yeah, I don't know. This is, you guys can talk about the game while I'm like looking this up. But Sam, you seem to you're player of the game.
Yeah, my player.
You have some thoughts.
Yes, my first thought when I turned on the game was that Leandro Marks was not wearing his sunglasses. So I think
be a factor.
I think it's worth looking into if that's a factor for them. No, but it was Seattle got out to an early lead, and then the Nitro tied it up to end the first quarter, and then the second quarter, Seattle won 7-1.
Wow!
And that pretty much ended the game. I would say like I mentioned, the big thing was Adam Simon just being so sure-handed for them. The Cascades went 17 of 17 in the red zone, which shows a lot of patience and, is impressive given the conditions of that game. And then I mentioned Declan Miller was someone I was thinking about being my player. He was just, you see his name all over this. He was playing a ton of points, getting a ton of Ds, scoring a bunch. Yeah, he had a great game.
A couple things. Portland had 29 turnovers, which I just made a big deal about how Ottawa had 27. And so that's pretty terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the Nitro broke their streak of games with 10 plus completed hucks. They only had 9. That was something I saw Daniel Cohen talk about, so I can't actually take credit for it, but I still thought it was interesting. And also Marks had 5 throwaways. They slowed him down a little bit. He still had 7 goals, 3 assists, but he had 5 throwaways.
Jeez. Yeah, he had a couple drops too, I think. Maybe 1.
I don't know if Nitro had like
Daniel Lee, the 100%.
Daniel Lee. It was Daniel Lee. Daniel Lee wasn't playing in this game.
Yeah,
that's pretty big. They were missing their sort of sure-handed guy that Seattle had.
I think knowing not just sure-handed. I mean, this dude is like he was like an O-line handler, and he's like skying people on defense. That's crazy. He wasn't. That might have been a huge factor. Like also a lot of these AUDL teams when they go on the road, like they don't bring their whole roster every time. So like these road games, you got to look at the roster. So that'll like make a big difference. Knowing that, I don't know if I would have. I mean, I maybe still would have picked Nitro, but
I'm just gonna pick the home team every time from now on.
Yeah, unless you're Wisconsin, but it's different because like in the Midwest, you don't have to travel as far. So
yeah, they're all pretty clumped around there.
Yeah, they're kind of clumped. I sent into the chat a picture of Leandro Marks that I think might be worth throwing.
He's amazing.
Well, okay,
yeah.
Sheesh.
Look at that mustache.
Yeah, he needs
the
sunglasses.
It's those sunglasses. Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, yeah. So any more thoughts on this before we move on to, I think, our final game?
Shout out to Seattle. Way to get that win.
Yeah,
it was tough. Man. It was tough to see the 0 for Seattle.
Yeah.
0-5. Yeah.
That's kind of sad. Yeah. Let's
do it.
What do we got next, Sam? What do you got next for us?
The big one.
Oh,
game of the week.
All right, Ryan, give us the whole breakdown.
All right. I think this game, these two teams, is going to be a matchup to watch throughout the rest of the year. We talked about in our tier list about both of them kind of being the A team. Both of these teams are brand new to the AUDL, but they've got stud on both sides. They've got the Summit specifically just have a ton of names. But so I went to this game, and the atmosphere, Colorado has needed an ultimate Frisbee team for a while now. Like, it's just made sense. The stands were packed for this game. Everyone there was so hype. This game came down to the wire, 20-21. I don't know. I mean, how is it on stream? Was it as cool on stream as it was in person?
I'm sure it wasn't as cool as it was in person, but it was amazing, and the crowd seemed so into it.
It was electric. There was layouts. There was great throws. There was. I mean, the only downside to this game was I think both teams had over 20 turns, which is a lot. But I mean, this game was awesome. Both teams had players that showed out. Jordan Kerr with 6 assists, Merrill with 5 goals. We already talked about Jay Frood. This game was awesome.
Yeah, I thought. I picked the Shred to win, and I think in hindsight, they really hadn't been tested like this before. This was their first real test going on the road and playing a really good team in the Summit. And yeah, I mean, I guess the takeaway is like, I mean, they were still really evenly matched. It came down to the last throw, really, right? Like,
well, kind of.
They had a chance. They had a chance.
the Summit kind of had it in control. They were receiving with like basically no time left, and then Nethercut like caught it out of bounds, which gave them an opportunity to just chuck it with 0 seconds left. Which, you know, then they had a last throw, but yeah, down to the wire.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, they played it down to the wire. Road games are tough. You know, we don't know what types of like smaller roster changes that maybe went into play. But
sure,
it was their first test, and they lost to the Summit, and maybe that's something that we should have seen coming. I think just in the future, factoring in the home road, like, you know, dynamic there is definitely something to strongly consider. I'm still very high on the Shred, but I think the takeaway is like the Summit really showed what type of team they are.
You guys were talking about the Shred's huck percentage coming into this game. It was relatively high compared to the rest of the league, right? Joe, off the top of your head, do you remember what it was
before this?
Yeah, before this game, just like general.
No, but I know their top 6 were, it was like 90%. Their top 6 handlers was like 90%.
Yeah, and that's insane. And then this game, they had only 40% huck percentage.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is, you know, who knows what their top 5 handlers are, but there was not a lot of wind. I was there, and the wind, I don't think the wind was a factor.
Did you bring anything to measure? Do you know what the miles per hour were?
I didn't have my gaugeometer, but after the game, I did get on the field and toss a frisbee around, and I had some control. You know, I felt good. So looking at the stats, though, it's pretty evenly matched. I think the big difference between the Summit and the Shred was really just the defense. The Shred only generated 9 blocks, while the Summit generated 13. But other than that, like conversions on O-line, D-line, break percentage, very evenly matched. So I think when you have a 1-point game difference, those 4 turns that the Summit generated, I think that was the difference maker.
Do we want to talk about the Nethercut kind of blunder at the end? I have a couple thoughts about it, and then I kind of want to see what you guys think about it. But
yeah, go for it.
I see Nethercut kind of in my mind. I mean, he's Nethercut. You put him on this pedestal. He's infallible. You know, he's this handler that can throw it 80 yards, and he's just, you know, he's Nethercut. Like, you hear the name and the reputation precedes it. And it was kind of an interesting moment to see him make a mistake like that. And if you didn't watch the game, it was towards the end. The Summit, all they had to do was just punch it in, and they won the game. Basically, the clock was running down.
Just run. They didn't even need to punch it in. They just needed to hold the disc.
They just needed to, they just needed to swing it. They just needed to swing it a few times. Yeah. And he was going for the disc, and he thought he was in bounds, and he just was not in bounds. And because a lot of AUDL fields are on, you know, multi-purpose fields. They're at like, you know, a college or a high school, and it's like they've got all kinds of lines for the soccer field and the football field and the, you know, the track and field, you know, discus and shot put, whatever. You know, on one hand, it's like there's so many lines, and like as a viewer, I'm always like, it's been something I've probably commented on before. I don't know if I've said it in the podcast before, but like there's too many lines in the field. Like, we got to figure this out. We got to get some, like, you know, I long for the day where every AUDL team has like their own field. It's like a frisbee field. You know, I think that's gonna be awesome when that day comes. But at the same time, you know, that type of mistake is not what you want to see out of your top you know, dude that you're really relying on. Obviously just a mistake. They still won the game. But it was definitely like a moment where I was like, wow, that is like kind of, I don't know where the line is, right? I mean, what does everyone else think?
Yeah. I mean, being there, like everyone I was sitting next to, we were just like, what just happened? Like, how do you make that mistake? It's like, you know, they're acting like the Detroit Lions, like letting a team come back with like 2 minutes left. Like, how do you make a mistake like that?
Yeah. And I think he had a pretty solid game. I think it was fine. He probably, for his own internal feelings, probably doesn't feel like he had a fantastic game, but he is just good. So he got lots of yards, but mentally, I don't know. He also got stalled twice in the game. I felt like he made a few mental mistakes that game, and I don't know what it was, but I mean, maybe you just chalk it up to, some nerves. First home game ever for this team or something like that. Because I mean, he's still fantastic, and I don't really feel like this is him showing that he's not actually a high IQ player or something like that. But it was interesting because I felt like he did make a few mental mistakes in the game in general. It wasn't just that, though. That was not a good one.
Speaking on the stalls, there so another guy got stalled twice, and then a guy in the shred got stalled. And I do think all three of those stalls were kind of quick. It seemed like it was more about like 5 or 6 seconds, and everyone on the field was kind of like, wait, that was a stall? Maybe I'm just so used to a 10-second stall in college or club, but so I can't speak to that, but it did feel like everyone on the field was like, wait, that was a stall. But yeah, other than that, the out of bounds mental mistake was kind of tough, especially in a key moment at the end of the game. Like, you got to know where you are.
Yeah, it was such an important, like, if that didn't happen and he just just kind of, if he was aware of where the line was, then I mean the game was over. But it gave them like a Hail Mary basically, which isn't a super high percentage look, but it gave them a chance at the end. I
think one of the other end of quarters was caught in an insane sky that ended up getting ripped out but called for a foul, so they counted
that was
it.
Rude.
Yeah,
so it's like we've seen that the Hail Mary, like someone can catch it, like it was crazy. But from an entertainment standpoint, I was like, oh boy, here we go. Like so it wasn't all bad, but
to close out sort of this final game discussion, I just wanted to like name a couple guys who really impressed me in this one. On the shred side, definitely Joe Merrill. He was all over the field, scoring an insane amount of goals. And then Clutton, we talked about earlier, defending Frood. He did a great job. And then on the Summit side, obviously Spicer and Frood we mentioned. I was really impressed with Matt Jackson, their handler. I can't recall if he was over D-line, but he was extremely reliable and pretty versatile. He could kind of cut downfield. And then Wiseman on the Summit's defense was that gigantic guy who was like a huge mark. He was just like ridiculous. And then Joseph Anderson, who was, I think, kind of tasked with guarding the Shred's main handlers. He was just like so in their face and aggressive. I was really impressed by him.
Clutton actually led the team with 3 blocks, and he was actually third on the team in plus minus for the game. So not a ton of yards, but plus minus wise had a pretty good game.
It was a good game. I mean, like similar to when I tuned into Winchell and Madison, and I was like, oh, this is like different. I like tuning into this one. It was kind of a different brand of Ultimate almost, but I was like, this is, man, I mean, it was definitely a gunslinging game in the beginning, and then it kind of tightened up, as both teams kind of settled in, but it was a really, really good watch. It was a fun game to watch.
I think both teams really wanted it. Colorado, like opening game at home, Salt Lake, like kind of on a win streak and just wanted to like stay undefeated. Like these players, like they went all out. Like it really seemed like they were fired up after turns or breaks or this and that. Like kind of the emotion on the field, like reminded me of like a high level like college tournament about like kids that aren't getting paid or aren't like doing this. They're doing it for like the love of the players next to them and just wanting to win, and that's kind of what it felt like on the field.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that in the AUDL, honestly, because these are the skill level and the talent of the players is there, but like are they going out and like playing like their life depends on it? It seems like a lot of these games they are, which is like it's awesome to see. It really is. Makes it super entertaining.
Shout out Reese Lanky Ghost Bowman from the Soul for giving us an exclusive interview about how hard road trips are.
Yeah, they're hard, they're tough.
All right, well, we've obviously kind of touched on these, but let's make some official claims about, is anyone moving up or down for you? Ryan, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I think the obvious one is the Summit. The Summit is S tier, and kind of looking at the Radicals. I didn't watch the Winchell game, as we kind of talked. It wasn't really streamed on AUDL.tv, but if anything, I would switch those two. We can talk about the Radicals moving down, and the Shred is for me. I could be convinced either way to put the Shred in S or A tier. So we could talk about that, but I think the Summit kind of showed that they're an S tier team.
Yeah, agreed. I would have the Shred in S too, personally.
Honestly, yeah.
I'm gonna go agree. Yeah.
Just put them both.
Okay,
I mean,
cool.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's tough.
I mean,
tough.
so that we're talking about the Summit for sure going, S. Like that game was 20-21. Like you play those teams 10 times in a row. You play half of them at Salt Lake, half of them at Colorado. Like I wouldn't be surprised if it just went 5-5. Like they looked so evenly matched. So I'm cool putting both teams in the S tier.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I don't have an argument. I mean, it's tough to move a team from A to S after losing a game.
Yeah.
So that would be my only voice of dissent for putting Summit in the S, or for Shred in the S. But you win games against good teams. Like I think we talked about this when we made it. It's like you can play yourself into any tier. And I think the Summit played themselves in the S tier. They looked really awesome in that game. So yeah, I think I'll agree on that one.
I think I want to swap Pittsburgh and Seattle. I think, and again, like moving a team down after they won is like kind of rude, but I mean Pittsburgh's not very good.
Do we have to move them down? Like, why? We don't have to swap.
We don't have to swap, but I want to swap.
Yeah,
I think that Pittsburgh is a F tier team. They might be the best F tier team, but they don't belong next to the Rush after watching how these two teams played this week.
That's a good point.
And like, I would also stake my life on Seattle over Pittsburgh in a game. So.
Yeah, Seattle was my other one that I was going to move up to C tier.
Maybe we should move the Rush up.
That's
maybe
that was going to be my point. Rush looked really good.
Yeah,
Rush looked really good. They looked at least B tier. Just eye test, like how good they looked. I have kind of like a devil and an angel on my shoulder when it comes to the Rush and whether or not they deserve to move up, because the devil is saying they lost a game. Every AUDL team is good. Like you can watch two teams play, and unless they're like an F tier team, it'll be close in the beginning, and then maybe the better team like depth comes into play, or just like they capitalize on a couple of mistakes and then they go, and then you still walk away being like, oh, the team that lost, oh, those players are great, oh, they looked good until blank, so that's kind of the one side. And then the other side is like I'm high on the Breeze. I think the Breeze are great. And the Rush were playing them toe for toe. And I don't think they deserve to be next to, like you said, Sam, a team like Pittsburgh, or like we were looking at Ottawa. Like maybe Ottawa needs to move down. I don't know.
I think Ottawa's bad.
They beat Boston in a home game.
I don't know if they need to move down to F tier, but I think the Rush are clearly better than Ottawa.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, maybe Rush is B. Do we move Rush up to B? I mean, I think we all want to.
I vote yeah.
It's tough after an L, but it was but the last like devil point is like we know the Breeze's defense is like very lacking. And it's easy to like look really good against a defense that isn't really pressuring blocks and stuff. So that's my just last kind of point. I think we should look at everything before we move the Rush up.
I think Rush is a borderline C tier team. It's hard to define. Yeah, it's hard to define what exactly the tiers are. Similar to, I think we make a call. If we move the rush up, we also move the shred up. But if we don't move the shred up, we don't move the rush up, because I don't think we should give teams that lose, moving up.
We should be consistent
and vice
with
versa.
it. That's an excellent point. We can't like pick and choose like that.
And I'm leaning towards not moving both teams. I think having more rigidity in our tier list than just like flexibility every single week is better. So
yeah, I'm with that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is anyone on board with Wind Chill being an A team, or do you need to see more?
Maybe. Okay, can we talk about this? Portland maybe going B. I don't know. They lost to Summit. They lost to an F, who maybe we think is C, but they lost to a C team, and they're an A. You know what I mean? They're in the A tier.
Yeah.
And they lost to at best a C tier team, and they lost to the Summit. I mean, they could have won that game, and then how does the narrative change there? But maybe the Wind Chill earned the right to switch places with Portland.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I could see that.
Yeah, I'd like to see when Lee comes back how Portland plays, and maybe this was just like a really terrible game for them, but I don't think they played like an A-tier team at all.
No, they lost by 8. Like, it was not.
Yeah, that was they played terribly.
Yeah. And look, like Portland, you can play yourselves back into the A tier. You can. We're not like, we are right now. The exercise is we're shuffling it around. So I mean, I agree. I think maybe the Wind Chill, the Wind Chill beat A, they're in B. I think that's the biggest thing. If there's a gap between the tier that you're in and the team that you beat, I feel like something's got to like switch, right?
For sure.
So
I think we're all on board there.
Yeah.
Well, to be consistent, we're gonna put Pittsburgh in C tier, and then when they lose their next game, we'll drop them down to F after that.
Pittsburgh, we're watching you.
We're watching you.
That's fair. That's fair. And Seattle
goes up.
C, and we're keeping Rush at the same spot.
Yes.
I guess.
Cool.
Yeah. Should we say that as a rule? Like, if you win, we can talk about moving you up, and if you lose, we can talk about moving you down. But if you win, we can't like move you down, because like you won, you did your job.
I don't know about us.
I don't feel like it's ridiculous to have the Rush
strong guideline
with Ottawa and Pittsburgh.
I agree with
that. The thing is though, but like Joe, what if Rush played Empire this weekend and got sauced by Empire? Then we would be like,
that's true.
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with Sam. I don't know about a rule, but like, it makes sense. You're not going to reward a team for losing, and you're not going to bring a team down.
And you might want to do like a double S tier for just the Empire.
Yeah.
Yeah. They haven't really been tested either. Who have they played?
That is true.
Time? Like, let's see them play.
That'd be crazy. Yeah.
Let's see them go on the road.
I want to see them play the Flyers or the Summit, especially the Summit in Colorado.
Let's see them go on the road.
Altitude
to Carolina.
For these New Yorkers.
Yeah. Let's see them go on the road in Raleigh. Let's see them go on the road in Atlanta or something, and see that. That's when you kind of see what team they're made for. Because right now they're kind of on the they're kind of cruising how the Shred kind of were. Until they were really tested by the Summit. So New York's kind of been cruising.
Actually, speaking of your just most recent hypothetical, the Rush do play the Empire this week.
Let's go.
Ooh.
So I think that'll be a good tell
again.
Of what they are.
It's tough. I don't think it's going to be that dissimilar from Ottawa, because Ryan and I were a little bit high on Ottawa because they had just beaten Boston Glory when we made this tier list, and we put them below the Glory on the tier list. So
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Here we have this beautiful picture that Ryan took of the game and our end of week 5 standings. I was looking at this beforehand, and it seems like the East has the Empire, who are maybe head and shoulders above, like we'll see obviously, but appear to be head and shoulders above everyone else. The South has the Flyers, who appear to have that potential as well. And then the Central looks like it's going to be an interesting playoff race with Chicago, Madison, Indianapolis, and Minnesota. And then the West obviously has those really good top end teams. So that's going to be interesting too. What are your guys' final thoughts for week 5?
I think some of the games we talked about, we've kind of gone into detail on them, but I can't wait to see the Aviators get back into action, specifically Rookie of the Year frontrunner Everest Shapiro. Super excited to see what he can bring to the team. They're 1-2, and I would love to see them climb the leaderboard. We talked a little bit about the Nitro. Maybe the Aviators can pass up the Nitro and maybe pass up the Growlers too and earn that. I think the West gets 3 playoff spots, so that'd be kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, this Leandro Marks versus Everest Shapiro matchup is going to be a fun one to see who can
for sure
make a bigger impact on the game.
I'm looking at these records, and like some teams have played half the number of games as others. I think the jury is very much still out on what's going to happen this season. I think some teams need to play more games and figure out, what kind of teams they really are. I think the Aviators Nitro, they're going to play each other next week. I think that'll be an interesting matchup. I can't remember is that a home or an away game for the Aviators?
I think that's an away game.
Has to be away.
I think they have a back-to-back, both away with Portland and Seattle.
That's gonna be a big test. I mean, I think the Aviators can kind of nudge themselves up if they go. I mean, it's tough. It's a gauntlet, I think, to do the 2 away games. But with Shapiro back with the team, I think that'll definitely be an interesting. I mean, Shapiro and Marks will have a chance to go head to head to really, one will come out, I think, on top in the Rookie of the Year conversation. So I'm really looking forward to that matchup.
All right. Is that it for everyone?
Did it. Look at us.
I mean, I got one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm open.
I'm open.
This week, so open.
All right. Well
done.
Yeah.
Well
thanks
done,
for
everybody.
watching or listening to episode 2 of I'm Open.
If you made it to the end of this podcast, if you legitimately listened to the whole thing, tweet at us and let us know, and we just want to hear from you. Who are you? Do you want to come on?
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, please do come on if you want to. We're not very selective.
No. I'd be fascinated to see it. Tweet at Ringer the AUDL. I listen till the end. Tweet at us.
Daniel Cohen, if you're out there, let us know. Cohen. Come on the pod.
We know you're listening.
Friend of the pod.
We know it's you, Daniel.